Now remember, these are still early hours yet, and we still don't have full information of how Ismail Haniyeh was actually killed. There are several theories doing the rounds. Most people agree that this was an Israeli airstrike of some kind of missile or drone that struck the veterans' accommodation in North Tehran, where Haniyeh was supposed to have been accommodated as a guest of the Iranian government. This was in that Tehran home. That's theory number one. The second is, of course, some kind of a drone attack by Israeli-backed forces that killed Haniyeh. The third theory, one that has not been substantiated at all, is that this was some kind of a commando ground raid and that Ismail Haniyeh was shot dead in the shower. This has been completely debunked. And theory four, that Haniyeh fell victim to internal rivalries within the Hamas itself, fueling speculation that he was sold out within Iran itself, or maybe he was betrayed. Could there have been factions within the Hamas who were vying for control and may have seen Ismail Haniyeh as a hindrance? Now, we don't know for sure, but most experts agree that this was an airstrike of some kind that finally ended the life of the Hamas chief. Remember, not a single picture has emerged in the public domain of the site of the attack. So we're still only working with secondary information coming in from Israel and the surrounding countries. Joining me live now to make sense of this big development, Lital Shemesh is a well-known Israeli TV anchor and journalist. Lieutenant Colonel Doron Avital is a former commander of the Israeli Defense Force. Welcome to the both of you. Thank you very much for your time. First of all, it's a big day for Israel, also a day to celebrate, given that Ismail Haniyeh is the man who was behind the attack that took place on October the 7th last year, triggering this fresh cycle of violence and conflict, that has bogged down Israel and Gaza for the last 11 months. Colonel Avital, I'd like to come to you first. Your assessment of how what happened. The assassination of Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran appears to be a pretty daring operation. How do you see it? How did it play out in your view, sir?
I think this is a very clean execution done from some distance. It requires intelligence in a level that it's hard to imagine, and a window of opportunity that the executors can use in order to utilize such a clean assassination where there's no collateral damage, nobody else is being hurt. Israel didn't take responsibility. Think that it was done in the guest house of the Revolutionary Guards, our arch enemy. So for them, it's really should really undermine them dramatically. I'm not sure it's Israel, but how did the intelligence penetrated into this location and succeeded to execute such a clean operation? And of course, this is the arch-enemy of Israel. He and Sinwar are the political leader and the military leader of Hamas, the leader in Gaza and the leader outside of Gaza, and they were arch-enemies, and is now gone.
Very interesting. Lital, if I could bring you in right now, the Israeli media is also full of theories about what may have happened. There appears to be a lack of clarity about the precise details, which is not surprising because this operation happened, just early in the morning, overnight, as a matter of fact, after the presidential inauguration in Iran. In the Israeli media, how are you seeing it? Your first assessment of what happened, Lital?
Yes, as you said, it's a day of celebration because we are talking about Hamas leader, about the number one personality in the Hamas terror organization. So for Israel, it's a great day. This was the man who was responsible for the horrific massacre on October 7th. This was the man who was responsible for the murder of 1,200 innocent Israelis, women, men, children, babies. This was the man who abducted 240 hostages into the Gaza Strip. Half of them are still being held in the Gaza Strip. So yes, in Israel, it's a great success. It's a great success for the Israeli military, and it's a great success for the Israeli intelligence.
Colonel Avital, I wanted to ask you a question about whether this is going to be something that leads to an escalation from Iran's side. because Iran has reacted to this killing on their territory as well. Do you see a response from Iran, sir?
You're talking to me? Sure. I think the Iranian, this is a breach of their sovereignty. And if they would come to the conclusion, which I think they came, that Israel is behind it, they have to find a venue to react or to retaliate. It doesn't have to be a venue like it used to be in the 13th of October. It doesn't have to be a massive missile attack. It can be also in the secretive warfare. It can be attack against our diplomats abroad. I mean, they would calculate and calibrate a reaction. We have to be prepared. And of course, there is the front of Hezbollah, because adding to this Haniyeh assassination, there was the assassination of number 2 in Hezbollah in Beirut. Early evening yesterday, which is also a major success. No collateral damage, clean hit. Somebody who's number 2 responsible for the terrible massacre of the kids in the Golan Heights, the 12 kids of the Jewish community. So we have to also expect the front with Hezbollah to erupt. We have to be very prepared. Who knows? I think in the short term, escalation. The long term, who knows?
Okay, short-term escalation is possible, long-term remains uncertain. Let's never forget that, over 100 Israeli hostages continue to, are believed to be still inside Gaza. Their condition is unclear at this time. Little, the killing of Ismail Haniyeh, do you think the killing of the Hamas chief will speed up the return of hostages or possibly escalate the situation in the short term, like Colonel Avital says?
It's a good question, and it's a question we're asking ourselves here in Israel. To my opinion, it will help the release of the hostages, because as we've seen in the past, the more pressure, the more military pressure you're putting on Hamas, whether it's inside the Gaza Strip or whether it's taking down from the air heads of Hamas, in my opinion, is helping the surrender of Hamas and is helping creating some sort of a deal, because talking about hostage deal basically means Hamas is also getting some of their demands of Israel withdrawing from certain parts of the Gaza Strip. So in my opinion, the more military pressure that you are putting on Hamas, the more military pressure that you are putting on Hamas heads, the better. This is a signal for the rest of the heads of Hamas, the heads of Hezbollah. Israel is saying, you are next. So if they want to end the war, and if they want to continue to live side by side with Israel, they must immediately release the hostages and just surrender, because Israel will not allow a terror organization controlling the Gaza Strip after October 7th.
Colonel Avital, you touched upon the level of intelligence that would have been required to kill Ismail Haniyeh, that too in Tehran. And we know about the relations between Israel and Tehran, so this would have been a very, very complicated operation, the details of which obviously we don't know just yet. But, Ismail Haniyeh is otherwise based in Qatar. He's moved around a bit. It's taken 10 months to finally track him down and kill him. Talk to us about that, the complexities of actually tracking a high-value target of this kind. People will also be asking, why wasn't he taken out earlier, perhaps in Qatar? Could you explain that to our viewers, sir?
Yes, sure. First of all, prior to the 7th of October, the Israeli Mossad, and we took some responsibility for some operation, was operating in some major operation in Iran, like we succeeded to take the archive of the nuclear documents. We succeeded to hit people that were responsible for the nuclear program in Iran. So the Mossad in Israel proved its capabilities to operate within Iran. It was always an embarrassment to the Iranian regime. But I was thinking that after the 7th of October, they would be more careful. And it seemed that the intelligence, if it's Israel, the intelligence proved itself. Why not Qatar? You see, Qatar, we shouldn't forget, it's also an American base. Qatar is really a mediator between us and in the context of the hostage deal, whatever the cards they are playing, but they are officially in the mediation interval between us and Hamas. But Iran is an enemy territory from our perspective. We always exchange publicly missiles and attacks. So attacking, if it's Israel, attacking within Iran, it's a legitimate context, and this is an arch-enemy. and the opportunity arises, and you need to have a window of opportunity for such an attack. It's not enough their basic intelligence and the way to operate within Iran, but you need this clean window of opportunity where you can attack, and this is what was executed here.
Tiny window of opportunity that's been used by Israel. Lital, the theories that have been doing the rounds about, how Ismail Haniyeh was finally killed have been swirling. That fog of war is still there. You're a journalist. You understand how there's a lot of speculation. There was one report that said that Haniyeh was killed while he was taking a shower. Others talk about a commando raid. But I think most people now agree that it was some kind of an aerial strike. How are you reading it in the Israel media? How was Ismail Haniyeh killed?
So yeah, Israel is still, for us in Israel, we are still basically us, the journalists, still trying to get information about the way Ismail Haniyeh was being taken down. We know it was some sort of an airstrike. We still don't know whether it was a missile or a drone. At the moment, Tehran, Iran is not giving enough information for us to know the full picture. But we do know yesterday, as you mentioned, he was in the inauguration of the new Iranian president, which gave Israel an opportunity to take him down, because usually he's hiding in Qatar. Usually that's his place of seek. And I think it's an enormous message that Israel is sending, not just to Hamas and not just to Iran's proxies, but to Iran. Israel is basically saying to Iran, we will not be afraid to activate within your territory if you are hiding those terrorists, when you're giving shields to the heads of Hamas. And we know that at the end of the day, the one who is operating its proxies, the one who is in charge of everything that we're going through, from the rockets from Gaza and the rockets from Hezbollah, is Iran. Iran is the head of this whole operation. And if Iran wants to end the war, Iran can just say the word and make its proxies end this immediately. So Israel is also sending an important message to Iran.
Are we looking at, and this is my final question to the both of you, Colonel Avital, to you first, is the possibility of a direct confrontation between Iran and Israel more likely now? I know you answered that question in part, but other than attacks by the proxies, is there a possibility or an increased possibility now of some kind of a direct exchange?
We have to take it into account. We had it in the 13th of April, but I do want to emphasize that we are in a coalition game. So we heard Lloyd Austin talking about that the U.S. would stand by Israel if Israel is attacked, as they did in the 13th of April with other members of the coalition. So Israel, we and our coalition should think in terms of a coalition game and against the coalition led by Iran with its proxies, and also supporters like Russia, China, whatever. So we have to be very careful. Escalation is really a possibility, whether it's regional, whether it goes more. This is something we have to worry about. But escalation is really a possibility in the near future for sure.
Lital, same question to you. Iran, Israel, I was in Israel for a few weeks last year after the October 7th attack, reporting on how this entire story was playing out. And I remember talk of a possible exchange between Iran and Israel was constantly in the air, but most people agreed it'll still most likely be through proxies. Do you see that continuing, or do you see that escalating?
I think at the end of the day, it's inevitable. At the end of the day, Israel will need to find the time and the place to attack Iran. Because as we speak, as the whole world is focusing on what is going on in Israel with the rockets from Hezbollah and the rockets from Hamas, Iran is continuing to enrich uranium. And it's doing it rapidly. And America at the moment is been dealing with its own internal elections. And Iran knows that. And Iran is enjoying the fact that the world is not pressuring it. So I think sooner or later, Israel will need to do what Israel will need to do to try and prevent Iran from becoming a nuclear country. And I think it needs to be done ASAP.
Lital Shemesh and Lieutenant Colonel Doron Avital, it's always a pleasure getting that perspective directly from Israel on this unfolding story. Very much appreciate your time here on India Today. Thank you so much. Now I want to bring in India Today's managing editor Gaurav Sawant, who along with me reported from Israel in the days after the October 7th attack. Gaurav and I were there on the front lines for many weeks in Israel, at the Gaza border, in the Palestinian territories, reporting on a story that continues even 10 months later. Gaurav, the first question I want to ask you is, what are you hearing from within the Indian government? India has very close relations with Israel. It has good relations with Iran as well. Indian Minister Nitin Gadkari was there similarly for the President's inauguration in Tehran as well. What are you hearing from the Indian government at this time, Gaurav?
So we're only hearing from sources who are monitoring all developments very closely. There isn't an official reaction just as yet from Government of India at any level. As you very rightly pointed out, India is very close to Iran, and at the inauguration of the new Iranian president's office, when a new Iranian president took office, Nitin Gadkari, Union Minister and one of the senior most ministers in the Narendra Modi government, he represented India there. It's also very critical because the Chabahar port and that access is extremely important. So Iran and India remain very close allies, as do India and Israel on the security setup, on the strategic setup. And also, when Israel needed a lot of manpower after stopping all Palestinians from coming in the wake of October 7 terror attack, then a lot of Indians went in to provide that manpower to keep, their industry chugging, their and also their healthcare. So India and Israel are also equally close. But right now, India's just hoping that the situation does not escalate, that the Houthi rebels do not, target civilian ships extensively in the Red Sea area, because that is where India has a very important role to play to ensure that the sea lanes of communication are terror-free and are open for trade. That is India's principal concern, as that remains a principal concern for most democracies across the region.
Very, very interesting. We'll wait and see if the Indian government articulates a view on what is taking place. Very understandable that it will be waiting and watching as the many different unknown pieces fall into place, especially the role of the United States, as it were, in what has just taken place in Tehran.